Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Not Too Comic Book. This being a show where I talk about TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the season premiere of Gotham. A fantastic season premiere. It was so good. I've been literally waiting all day for Gotham to come on, and I'm so excited. It did not disappoint. It was so good. Things to talk about immediately. For one, like when, obviously before the show even began, like the picture Fox used, loved it. It's like Gordon in front and then Bruce in the back, but he has like a cape's flowing, but it forms into bats, or vice versa, bats forming into a cape. Either way, I was like, ah. And the subtitle for this season is A Dark Knight. All things I had not seen or known about beforehand, but it's like, that was so good. That immediately got me. But just so much. Obviously, some of the stories kind of allude to it's been basically 3 months since season 3's finale. Obviously, Penguin has kind of, not mayor again, but he does have ruling power because basically he got the city back under control after the whole outbreak last season. The crime kind of kicked up and everything. So yeah, it's kind of interesting that basically Gotham would still put him in the light after everything he does. But I guess it's like, hey, yeah, Gotham's kind of messed up, so we kind of need someone messed up to kind of rein things back in. So because of him, he's pulling crime back by putting out licenses, which I thought was weird at first. I was like, wait, licenses? I was like, wait, there's licenses to commit crime, and it's like he's all behind. Because to him, it's like if you let kind of a situation of like in his mind, like in his mad genius of like, hey, you commit crimes, you make it a little bit more controllable, then things don't get as violent. Even asking like the commissioner and the mayor to get the cops to look the other way. I mean, granted, obviously, Gordon's not going to do that just because he's himself. And that's another thing immediately right off the bat too. Like, obviously, a lot of cops have a problem with Gordon. Even Harvey's like, come on, Jim, you don't want to challenge Penguin. We can take Penguin down, sure. Like, even he has his problem with this. But I think him, along with all the other cops, are having, it's like there's a good side to this. Is the fact is, crime is down. Yes, we have to let some crimes go here and there. Yes, that bothers us as cop, but it's better than the alternative. Like, our city has never had lower crime rates than it is now. Like, I mean, that's not just the show. Like, Gotham in general is known for being like the crime city that it is. So, of course, they're going to want the kind of embrace that a little bit more, even beat the crap out of Jim later on because like he's trying to fight it. But even he brings up a good point. It's like, well, the fact of the matter is you're okay with it now, sure, but what about the licenses that will eventually, what about the eventuality, the possibility that eventually it's like, hey, maybe soon murder will be okay. And the cops are okay with it too because it's not their personal lives. The moment someone that you care about or yourself is affected by it, you're going to have a very different mindset. But for now, it's like, hey, the city is quiet and peaceful. Cops have been getting hurt because of a huge crime rate before. Like, I mean, especially everything that the city's been through just in the series alone, obviously they would want things to kind of calm down. It's like, hey, Penguin's doing the right thing. I mean, to be fair, but the thing is, it's not like he's doing it for right reasons. I mean, he's a crime boss, monopolizing crime because every bit of crime that takes place, he gets a little cut of it. So, which he even passed on to like the mayor and the commissioner to kind of get them to kind of sign off on everything. So, but that's kind of a thing too to talk about is Harvey and Jim's relationship. It does seem like obviously like he backs Jim a little bit, but it feels like he calls Jim out on his plans even more. And this is like Jim kind of being like, it's actually kind of interesting because before last, it's always like, oh, Jim's kind of the oddball out in sense of like, the darkness and like in Gotham or whatever, the darkness in him. And it's like he's kind of being the shining light. I mean, granted, you could argue it's like for the wrong reasons. It's just him trying to give the middle finger to Penguin, but still, he is on the right in this situation because you let Penguin have this power. Now you don't know what the end result will be. You don't know where the line will be crossed, where the line will be drawn with this whole like licensing situation. So there's that. And you also know like he's got his own plans. It's kind of interesting that he is, once again, like kind of brought it up earlier, but like he's back on top again. So not mayor, but might as well be good enough because that's how he reined in everything in season 3 and became mayor in the first place, was rallying everyone against all of strangest creatures. So there's that. So I even love that he like turns that whole Ed's thing, like Ed being frozen and everything. It's like, my friend, he had a brain situation. He's sick. He asked me to freeze him and don't hide him away. Show him off to the public, trying to spin the publicity on that. I was like, that's pretty interesting. I mean, it's like you basically took Mr. Freeze's storyline, who you have on your side and everything, which is just so interesting that I wonder, is that what inspired him to come up with that lie, was specifically Mr. Freeze's story? Like, oh yeah, I could use that. I can use that to spin it. That's just kind of interesting to me. Obviously, Jim gives him a hard time and kind of calls him out on his BS. But nevertheless, like I said, getting back to what I was bringing up, Harvey, he's on Jim's side, but probably not to the extent he was in the past. It still seems that he still has Barnes' job. Still no replacement. To be fair, everyone that kind of gets that job eventually kind of got screwed over. You know, I mean, the question is, like, will that happen to Harvey? There's always the possibility. So, but even just aside from that, a big part in this, obviously, immediately, Bruce stepping up, obviously, like, going on Vigilante. We already saw the tail end of that last season, in season 3's finale. But interesting, we have Raish, or Raz, whichever one you want to pronounce it, but obviously the show's going to pronounce it Raish, so I'm going to try and pronounce it like that, but I'll probably end up slipping up every once in a while and call him Ra's al Ghul. Either way, flip-flops on either one, it doesn't matter. At the end of the day, you know who I'm talking about. I do appreciate the fact that he pops up in the episode, because it's like, of course he's going to keep his eye on Bruce. Like, all the time and investments he's put in Bruce, he's waiting for, like, the true moment for Bruce to kind of really reach his full potential, I assume. So, but you see him, like, kicking ass immediately at the beginning, taking down those muggers. No fear, they had guns on him, it didn't stop him. You see all that training didn't go to waste. He's really using it. And let's not even just him, like, you see Selena kicking those thugs' asses later on with the whip and just cartwheeling over. I'm like, ah! Both of them, like, their training is going really well. Really quickly about the Bruce thing, I love that they've already got him started on his Batman status. Of, like, he pops up and Jim's like, oh, hi, Bruce, I didn't even hear you come in. And then, like, him and Gordon converse for a little bit. And then, like, he's like, yeah, I'll come over for dinner. Turns, and Bruce is already going. It's almost like, what the hell? I was like, it's already started. And that's kind of an interesting thing, too, is you can tell, like, and this is major props to the actor who plays Bruce. He does a very good job because, like, you can tell Bruce is very different immediately in the scene because he's a lot more stoic. He's a lot more focused, you know, because he has his objective in mind. And he's a lot, because before, like, I guess everything he went through last season was all to focus him. And it kind of helped. It helped, you know, made him, you know, as Alfred said, kind of find his true north and everything. So he's very focused. And you see him in he's very calm, cool, and collect, like I said, stoic. Even when he's talking to Selena, like, she's like balancing on the edge, and he follows her up there, and you could tell she knows it too, that he's even walking over towards her on the edge with his hands in his pocket. What I think is kind of interesting is that he's already playing up kind of the Batman aspect, but even just as himself, you know, because typically, you know, Bruce Wayne's kind of like, oh, ha, 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 like, kind of might crack a joke, you know, Playboy Bruce Wayne, you know, and it seems like, and I think that might be something we see in this season for Bruce, is because you had even Alfred be like, yeah, there's time for the mask, and then there's times for Bruce Wayne, and I think that's going to be a big part for Bruce to learn. And it's like, before, like, I'm sure this season's going to be him, and it's kind of something I've kind of talked about the other DC shows, about how, like, the heroes, like, get to that point where it's like they have to choose between their secret identity, who they, you know, are, versus, like, their superhero personas, who, like, which is the real them. And I think that's something Bruce is going to deal with this season, because it's like, not everything can be dealt with the mask. As Bruce Wayne, he can do good for Gotham as both the masked vigilante as well as Bruce Wayne. So I just thought that was kind of a cool aspect. I'm sure we're going to see that a little more, probably see that shift in his character too. I mean, the other characterizations I feel like are a little different too, like Victor, like Zaz. I feel like I think I might have brought this up last season. I might not have, but I feel like Zaz is a lot more charismatic. I mean, obviously in a psychotic way, but it's just like the way the conversations he's having with people. It's like, oh, like I don't know, I feel like he's a lot more charismatic than he has been in the past. It's just kind of interesting that they add that, like, layer to it. I mean, maybe I'm just imagining it, and maybe it's come up before. I feel like I brought that up, but I feel like I just couldn't help but notice. I was like, he's so charismatic, once again in a psychotic way, but still, you know. But I'm kind of going back really quickly to what I was saying about Bruce. I was under the impression, I was like, okay, this whole vigilante thing is like, Alfred doesn't know anything about it. But it's like, no, Alfred's in on it. I'm like, of course he would, because he already a team in this, you know. So, not unless he was doing it for a little while, and then Alfred was like, oh, Master Bruce, Master B, what you up to? And it's like, you can't be doing this. Okay, let me be a part of this if you're going to do it. But he's like, you know, Bruce is doing all this to prepare himself because he needs live action training, you know, real training in preparation for Raish, you know, his reappearance, him and the League of Assassins, or rather League of Shadows. I think I ended up looking that up before because I always heard, like, I've heard other people refer to it as a League of Shadows, so I had to look it up, and it's like, it's both. Both is true. Like, I think different comic books you look at, sometimes they're referred to as League of Assassins, other times League of Shadows. It's literally the same thing. So I was just wondering if I was wondering if the whole, like, League of Assassins was just Arrow, but I guess, because of Arrow and everything, that was kind of more a fit, better than the Shadow. Nevertheless, that's technicalities. That's neither here nor there in that regard. But nevertheless, but it's like, no, he's like, okay, so basically if you're going to do this, your focus has always been like prepare for Raish and his group. But it's like, now you're talking about wanting to save the city. It's basically like you have to choose. You can't do both, because doing both will be splitting your mind, splitting your focus. And, this whole thing is about focusing on one goal. And if his mind and he himself are split, that leaves him, possibly defenseless on both fronts, because if he's split focus, he's not seen the full picture on either side. So it's either fully save Gotham, be the hero for Gotham, or prepare for Raish. Like, Raish, you have to choose one. But Bruce is under impression like he can do both, and immediately you go like, hero who split focus, you can already not a good thing. So obviously that's going to be a big challenge for Bruce going forward in this season. It's probably going to be, which side does he give 100% give his all to? Which side does he completely let go? Or will he be able to find a way to balance it? That will ultimately be the question of the season. So, but getting back to Selena, it's interesting to see that her and Tabitha are fully, embracing that teamwork. That is kind of her partner now. It's got to be a little weird for Tabitha, like having someone by her side, especially because the last person she had on her side was, Barbara, and now, and Butch. So, which Butch, we haven't, like, there's still more to that story. I kind of alluded to it in season 3. I was like, I ended up looking it up afterwards, before I started recording season 3's finale a few months ago. Like, I was like, oh man, finding out who his character, like his name is, his real name is Cyrus Gold, like what that meant. Once again, I'm keeping that to myself, but obviously you might already know. But I was like, I wonder how that's going to play out this season. But obviously, I'll get to some of that in a little bit. But it's got to be a little hard working with someone. Again, like learning to trust someone again. But it seems like they have a good bond, because it's like, obviously, like, Tabitha isn't all about working with Penguin, which Zaz had to be like, well, to be fair, you killed his mom, you tried to kill him, let's call bygones be bygones. Which Tabitha's still not all about working for Penguin. It's like, it's understandable. Let's face it. I mean, we actually think about it. Everyone Penguin pretty much works with, he either turns against, or, they ended up dead or whatever. Fish, that's happened twice now, like dead and coming back. Just to end up dead again. You see Ed's situation. So it's not like he's all that nice to people he considers friends. It's like, you do one thing, step out of line, he'll deal with you. So you can understand the reservations. But Selena's like, I told you, I want to work my way up. I'm not going to stay at the bottom. So she went to the meeting at the clubhouse anyway. Tabitha followed too, because it's like, oh, you're worried about me, aren't you? She didn't really respond, but you can tell she does, so she is worried about her. So, I mean, it's nice to know that Selena's not in this on her own, that she does have backup, like, I mean, things are still awkward between her and Bruce. Like, he apologized and everything, but it doesn't change the fact is that things are still a little rocky. But, this could be the path to mending fences. It's definitely going to be interesting, considering the fact is that they're on different sides of this, even more so now. Like, Bruce has always been aware of Selena's, like, more criminal side, but now going forward even more, especially if they're going to be working for the Penguin and him doing this whole vigilante thing, they're going to bump heads eventually, and that's definitely going to be interesting to see how that plays out. This might also be kind of another big season for Bruce, in a sense of how, like, obviously he's kind of almost putting himself more out there in the spotlight, because obviously Penguin was going to possibly execute those guys that tried to rob him, which is kind of interesting, like, that, like I brought up earlier, like, Alfred being like, oh, sometimes you need to be Bruce Wayne, and so him responding like that in front of a whole bunch of people, it's kind of interesting, because it's a situation where I think we're going to see that too, like Bruce Wayne more in the spotlight, it is vigilante popping all up all over the place, excuse me. So he's acting all friendly to Oswald. He's like, oh, bringing up like earning his trust, because it's like, yeah, because of it licensing things like this, maybe it could have prevented my family from being murdered. And at the same time, it's like, oh, but maybe you should hand him over to the GCPD, which is kind of going back earlier. I didn't really talk about it too much, but that is Well, I mean, I did talk about it, but not to the extent of like, not only is it just the cops like being against Jim, it's like that's a thing going for it too. Like the GCPD kind of being wiped from necessary because it's like, oh, you have Oswald kind of taking things, crimes at an all-time low and everything. And when ultimately the licenses came up in conversation, he kind of just like talked around it. But it seems like by the end, it's like he's openly admitting it. He's like, see what happened? I did this. I'm the one that's saving Gotham. So almost having like a hero complex of his own. And I think in some weird way, Oswald has always pictured himself as one. He's kind of painted himself in that picture on multiple occasions, like treating himself as like the underdog, combating the evil people above him like fish, and then fighting against all strangest people, all his experiments. And now you have, him fighting crime. It seems, I'm curious to see what that means going forward, like bumping heads with the vigilante and that being a headache for him in the future, so. But what does that also mean for Jim? Because it is going to be hard going forward when most of the cops look at you with contempt. Like I said, Harvey not 100% having your back, has your back, but there's still some reservations there that he's kind of like, ever since taking up, Barnes' position and everything, it's like Harvey's got to play a lot more politics than he used to. So I'm interested to see where Jim like falls in this whole season. Like, it seems like that struggle between the light and darkness might not be there. It's probably always going to be a part of him, but so far it hasn't really reared its ugly head. It is him just kind of, the more justice side of him is kind of kicking in. So I also appreciate the ending of the episode with Bruce stealing, the listing of all the licenses and who has what to do this and has a license to do what. Nevertheless, but him falling through the glass at the end when someone's like robbing the place and the GCPD shows up, and just like the episode, well, not really just ends there, but that's kind of like one of the end points of it. And it's like, that sucks for Bruce. Very auspicious that you just happen to be like here when a crime goes on. Like, what's up with that? Then again, it's Bruce Wayne, so people are just, either that's going to be spun as like, oh, Bruce Wayne's off committing crimes? What? Or it's just going to be like, oh, Bruce Wayne just happened to be in the wrong place at the wrong time. Or maybe, I'm curious to see how he spins it. I know Alfred's going to be, Master B, I told you what would happen. You went in there investigating, you weren't careful. Once again, losing focus. I'm sure that's going to be the conversation. Plus he's got the mask with him, not unless he hides that or something. Like, I'm just curious to see like how that's resolved. But another, like, obviously I haven't even talked about it, but a big focus of this episode was the birth of obviously a very huge Batman villain rising, and that's Jonathan Crane as Scarecrow, which I really appreciate. The fact is, in his cell in Arkham, like the design, like him drawing it from his nightmare visions, and they used it against him, those people who needed his fear serum. And they even said at one point, oh, we all have to face our fears. And it's like, by facing his fears, you made him you basically helped create, because I think if they had never messed with him, maybe he never would have been in a position to become the supervillain that he eventually will be. So I don't know if they're definitely, it doesn't seem like they're possibly setting him up to be main tier and bad guy of the season, like main antagonist. I think that still resonates as Ra's al Ghul. I think it's him and his League of Shadows. Like, they're going to be the main tier bad guys of this season. But I think, obviously, like, Penguin as well as Scarecrow are going to play a big part in that, and most likely other villains too. Another interesting thing, really quickly, a dynamic I want to bring up is Ivy, because we see her kind of shut off the lights at the end of the episode. I think, granted, like I said, it's been like 3 months since season 3's finale, and even then, it's like her and Penguin have already had like a rocky relationship, because it's like he doesn't treat her right. He treats her like an idiot, which she can be a little simple at times. Let's leave it at that. When it was like, he's like, I don't know which one of us is frozen, Ed, and she's like, no, it's him. It's definitely him, and he's just like, Ivy, can you just go away? Can you just not be here? And then she kind of gets pissed at him, like, and shuts off the light. So I don't know, like, maybe she feels like, because at first she thought of her and Penguin as friends, but I guess maybe over that 3 month period, he hasn't treated her right, kind of treated her like she was stupid, so she kind of feels a little undervalued. Maybe that's what that was kind of, give him a middle finger. It's like, oh, you want a treatment like that? Well, fine, here. We also see her and Selena kind of bump into each other, like at one point, her and Tabitha, but they kind of just leave. So things between them aren't what they used to be. Wasn't the last time they really interact was the time that she kind of sold them out. At that time, it's like, oh, I can trust Selena, but Selena accidentally, sold them out. She wanted Ivy to be okay, but still, nevertheless, I think that was like the last time they interacted last season, wasn't it? Maybe there's another time. If you do remember, let me know in comments down below. Like, I think that was the last time they interacted last season, but I could be 100% wrong. So I am curious to see like what happens in that dynamic. Will they go back to being friends? Where does her and Penguin stand? Like, is it just kind of like a one moment of just like maybe he said something or he did, because it seemed like the whole situation of him holding those guys captive that she kind of got upset about, or maybe it's just like she wasn't a part of the plan. It's like you let Victor in on everything that you're doing, and it's like maybe because Victor's become a more prominent right hand, and once again she's fallen to the background. So maybe it's like, oh, I thought we were friends. I thought I was one of your allies. And it's like apparently I'm not that useful to you. So maybe that's something, a dynamic that is being started here. I don't know, like that's just me guessing. So like I said, I cannot stress enough how good of a premiere this is. It's got me super excited for the rest of the season as well. It's just I just cannot wait to find out what happens in the next episode, as well as the rest of the season. Like, as you do know, I try to avoid watching the preview, so I have no idea what's going down in the next episode. But really, that's all I wanted to talk about in this episode. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.